and hopefully the stream will be okay. Actually, tonight I'm going to be doing a live video strictly for YouTube, and you guys will be able to be in the super chat and the chat, and it's going to be an interesting presentation like you've never heard before. And it's time to release some of the info that needs to be out there so people realize what we're facing and what the next few months and years up to 2029 is going to mean. And this is a time where we are going through an angelic rebellion war, and it's happening on our on our multi-dimensional level, and people need to realize this, and it's not to be taken lightly. Yes, it's interesting topics to discuss, but we're discussing this because it's yes, entertainment through videos on YouTube, but this is information for both spiritual and physical survival. And like I said, you could take some of the information. Some of it I discuss is me discussing a deeper intelligence or telepathic or psychic connection to some of this information, some of this research. But the whole reason why I got into research in general was to find scientific and scriptural support to some of my visions. And this is the only reason why I dig for both scriptural evidence and scientific evidence, is to prove some of the truths that is right there that we've been shut off to, for not for myself, but for all of humanity. And I recently did the Nephilim Anthropology Conference. I was the last speaker of the day, of the night, depending on where you were. And I wish I would have had a longer, because each speaker only had 20 to 25 minutes. So, and my specific topic that I was given to talk about was the giants from Babylon to America, right? So 25 minutes, 20 minutes is not a long period of time. So in my 20 minutes, I tried, and the DVD will be available, I think, in July for everyone. So this will be amazing. The two last speakers of the day was Leo Zagami and myself. And I think it was a good combination to have me after Leo, because I went even deeper into some of the stuff he was talking about, like that he was called Cyber Satan. And in my 25 minutes, I tried to, I had to blow through it real quick, but I tried to first break it down where people can try to, that has some sort of religious scripture background, and somebody who has done basic research of the topic can sort of grasp how giants ended up even in America and after the flood, right? So first I discussed a few minutes of the Garden of Eden and us falling into a lower dimensional reality, and how the rebellious fallen angels even ended up in this dimension, tinkering with the DNA, creating giants, and then how God brought the flood to eliminate the giants from this dimension, and how the giants continued after the flood, and how their DNA ended up emerging and populating hybrids in America. All right, so that's a big topic. I've been doing shows at least once a week for the last 6 years about these topics, and it's still not covered, right? So in 25 minutes, it's hard to give a description of how giants even ended up in America. So I gave a brief cliff notes of giants ending up in America, and then a few examples of some of the Native American tribes that had claimed to encounter either the spirits of the giants or literal giants themselves. And some of the info that I give, you can only find right here, because while I'm doing this research, I am receiving a deeper psychic connection. And whether people will admit it or not, we all have angelic intelligence connected to us. Those who have human souls and cosmic currency, which is DNA, our DNA is a part of a bigger existence, trust me. And that DNA and the knowledge stored within the code of our DNA, each one of us, is watched over. We exist because of a digital code. If we knew our digital code and what the whole, if we knew how to decipher our DNA, we would just be able to create humans, punch them into the matrix. Right? And from what I've been able to view and understand, and I've only caught a fraction of what is really out there of our existence, is that we sort of we have galactic computers out there, if you want to say. And where can you find this in scripture and religious writings? Well, you can find it right in the knowledge of the watchers and the fallen angels. Because if there's divine technology out there, right, technology of God, right, divine technology of God, of the universe, who would have access to that information and that technology? Well, his highest order of angels would. That's who would have access to divine intelligence and knowledge. In fact, the universe, or God, created the matrix, created angels, if you want to call them angels, as messengers of the universe to carry out divine missions. They are cometary messengers. Comets are technology and weapons of the universe, of God. My mouth is getting dry. I should have brought water. So the highest order of angels would be the ones with the knowledge and access to comets. In fact, look at the one archangel that's the general of war for God, the general of protection, the one that has the weapons of God to protect us with, is Archangel Michael. And Archangel Michael, of course, carries the fiery sword of heaven, where the windows of heaven open up and his fiery sword comes out, right? This is Archangel Michael that carries the cometary missiles, that carries the cometary bombardments of his sword. Right? And there's certain places that I've discussed that I've not heard anyone else in the world discuss, right? How the Himalayas are punching a hole through the stratosphere just so they can bring in the cometary DNA during the minimum sunspot cycles and make a drainage route for what's in the stratosphere, the cometary dust and viral DNA and bacteria that's hanging out in the stratosphere. It'll punch a hole through that stratosphere to make a drainage route for the cometary DNA to come through. And when it sweeps through, the first places it hits is Hong Kong and China, because of the way the Himalayas is set up and everything, and the cycle of everything, right? This is designed that way. That doesn't happen by chance. And it's bringing in viruses and that can not only, it doesn't just get species sick. They actually bring evolution to species. They change them genetically. You think that just happens randomly? And there is advanced technology, if you want to say inner earth technology, inner earth dimensions. From what I've been able to see, and it could be infinitely more, but we have at least 8 other earths, 9 that I know of. And there's other Earth-like worlds where Atlantis did not sink. And there's technology that has windows and gates to other worlds, where they can hack into the realities of other worlds. And hack into the inner Earth dimensions and different etheric, crystal, and metal technologies. And these technologies is what connects to the galactic computer board, the galactic matrix. There is advanced etheric, crystal, and metal technologies that can hack in and connect to the harmony of the universe, the harmony of the spheres, the crystal circles, the crystal spheres, the 9 crystal spheres of the universe. Thank you, Isaac, my brother. Let's get it warmed up here this morning. Shout out to Isaac. I'll send you some labradorite, brother. Hit me up. So they talk about the watchtowers of the Grigori. Even in the Persian star knowledge, right? The ancient Persian star knowledge, some of the oldest on our planet, talk about the watchtowers of the Grigori, from their towers in the sky, the eyes of the night. And the Grigori are the watchers, the rebellious fallen angels who decided to use the divine knowledge, the divine technology of God, so they can rule as gods in other worlds. There is a group of extraterrestrials, or rebellious angels, if you want to say, that have used the knowledge, the divine weapons of God, so they can themselves rule as gods and be worshipped as gods. And they have seeded other Earth-like planets, other worlds. And in our specific world, we have one timeline, right? But there's other timelines where similar Earth-like planets are running simultaneously. Just slightly different than ours, or drastically different. And gates have been opened to funnel in energies. This is where we get even the term of Babylon. The gates of heaven, right? And I do feel the Garden of Eden was when heaven was pierced. The heavenly dimensions, the higher harmonic frequencies of our evolution, that stargate was pierced. And that's what resulted into these other Earth worlds. These replicated worlds of a higher experience. Some of these worlds, I believe, have been brought back to the garden, have been brought back to a higher existence. Some of them have been completely dominated by Nephilim intelligences. Some of them have not been wiped out by the flood. And we are currently living in a replicated timeline of one of those re-emergences of Nephilim intelligences, where they survived the flood. And we have proof of that with the very technology that we have on our planet today. In fact, I do feel this is what Nimrod was doing. For those that don't know and don't really pay attention to the Bible and religious scripture, in fact, most Christians won't even realize this. I was going to call into a Catholic Sirius XM show yesterday afternoon because I was driving in the car and listening to it. But then I was like, you know what? This guy's not going to be able to handle my call even It was called the Busted Halo Show. And he was talking about Catholic misconceptions and some of scripture and things like that. Nowhere do they ever talk, and he was talking about how, you know, Catholics aren't against science, it fits into scripture, but then he never talks about fallen angels or anything. He doesn't even talk about where science and mysticism comes from. Crazy, right? And they're just people that are clueless out there. And we have a very interesting time we're living in, you know. Very interesting time. Where the technology and everything is merging together to create this hybrid race. And it's happening right before our eyes. And some of it comes with deep truth and imagery that activates truth. When you hear certain information, and that information comes along with some deep imagery, and it activates an inner, when you know an inner truth, your body responds to it, right? And some of the information that I was researching, even about King Og, hit me with a deeper truth. And some of the people on my Patreon that I've been sharing this with have even mentioned it, you know. And I do feel the giants that ended up in America was the King Og lineage, and or DNA. And most likely King Og's DNA came directly from one of the highest orders of angels. And in rabbinical literature, and I do feel the Jewish sages that were writing this rabbinical literature, they would call them Magadim. The Magadim. The Magadim, right? It's Maggidim. And a lot of them were pulling in information and discussing it in their commentaries and their rabbinical literature about King Og. And in my opinion, King Og his DNA is what Nimrod might have hybridization of. Now, for those that into their studies, they will find and come to the conclusion that after the flood, Nimrod, I lost service for a second, but Nimrod, after the flood, he becomes like a Nephilim, or like a Nephilim hybrid, and he's described as such. And with that genetic engineering, if you want to say, or hybridization, or being part Nephilim, he would have supernatural powers, and he would have supernatural sight, meaning that he would be able to see where the gates of heaven are, where the Stargate dimensional gateway and window to heaven is. This is why how the Tower of Babel emerged, something that can pierce the veil of heaven, and Nimrod would have the supernatural sight to see where that veil is, so he can try to pierce the veil of heaven, just like what happened in another dimension. I do believe that the veil of heaven was pierced, a dimensional veil was pierced, and this is how the Nakash entered in to the Garden of Eden. And they were trying to do it once again in this world. Pierce the veil of heaven. And this knowledge of Nimrod. I do believe also Nebuchadnezzar II had certain knowledge, and it was hidden for a very long time until Saddam Hussein was bringing back this technology. And we went in there and took it. And ever since we went after the early 2000s, all of a sudden we have CERN and different facilities emerging. Right? So most likely it was related to what we found in Saddam Hussein's possession. You know, he thought he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar and the Temple of and all of that, and he probably did stumble upon and find the gateway technology. And if you think about it, there's a very interesting word called betlon, or betlos. It's spelled B-A-I-T, like bait, B-A-I-T-L-Y-O-S, betlos, but it also can be Bet-Leon, or it can even, another word that's also similar is Bethel, right? And another word is even Leon, or Babylon, right? And now Bet-Leon, or Betlos, means stone or stones of God, or houses of God. Like Bethel means house of God, right? And the city of Bethel originally meant Lutz, L-U-Z, city of Lutz. Lutz is the city of light, or the city of heaven, and also means the Lutz bone, which is a whole nother interesting aspect, the gateway to a higher world, or heaven, right? So this is the spot of Jacob's ladder, right? The Lutz, right at the foundation stone. You know, the Temple Mount, that area. This is the spot of the Lutz, the gate to heaven. And that interesting name, B-A-I-T-L-Y-O-S, it can also mean like these stone intelligences of God, which is really interesting. It almost talks about like a crystal and metal technology that is like a UFO, and it's sentient, almost like a sentient sphere of light, or that could be a stone, right? Could be a comet or meteor, but more intelligent, like a sphere of light, a fiery sphere or stone. And I know I can't prove it, but God used weapons to bring destruction on this planet, and the flood and different things. And one of them is why the dinosaurs and the giants were wiped out, and why they had to continue through knowledge of the rebellious angels, right? Through genetic engineering and hybridization. Because the comet bombardments that were brought, in my opinion, were programmed with bacteria and virus, right? By God, by the universe, and his cometary messengers, his angels. And the comet bombardments that were sent here also brought the flood, and it brought different things, but it also was programmed with bacteria and virus within the comets that would make sure nothing on this planet would grow to that size again. That's why, how come after the comets and after the floods, if that DNA sort of survived in the water and all these different places, how come it didn't start to re-emerge and we never saw dinosaurs again? Right? Because what was programmed in the comets brought bacterias and virus and genetic engineering to this planet to make sure that nothing would evolve to that size again. And now the technologies and the rebellious fallen angels are finding ways to genetically engineer and continue their rise before judgment. And it's even talked about how the fallen angels, they can veil themselves as humans, disguise themselves as humans to hide themselves from even the archangels. And many of us, I do feel, there are actual humans right now that are veiled and disguised, and they don't even realize it. That rebellious fallen angels can inhabit their biosystem. And what's interesting is about King Og's lineage that some other people talk about, and some of the rabbinical literature that you can find about King Og talks that he did survive the flood. And many people don't discuss this. But it even has these amazing stories that brought my body to respond to the imagery within the words, talking about how King Og was holding on to one of the doors or the edges of the ark as the waters were rising, and that Noah felt pity for him and actually let him stay on the ark and was feeding him through a hole, and had him, at one edge of the ark, and was giving him food through a hole. And other stories talk about how later on Og he was now in debt and devoted to Noah, and even had children with Noah's daughters. And they talk about King Og's lineage as well. King Og being the son of King Oya Mahaya, which was a giant. And he had brothers as well, King Og, and they even talk about he had offspring. One of his sons being the giant Ogias, or Ogias, Ogias. And some say that, yes, Og's father was King Oya Maya, but King Oya, which is the father of Og, his father was the rebellious fallen angel leader, Samyaza. That Samyaza had sex or added their DNA to a human female to create King Oya, and then Oya created King Og. So King Og, containing the DNA of one of the highest order of angels, Samyaza, who is also called and associated with the name Azazel. So what happens now? So now these disembodied spirits and rebellious fallen angels are plagued to roam the earth, to haunt the earth until it's time for Judgment Day. And there will be a time where Jesus will reign for 1,000 years, and then Satan will be loose again for a short period of time. Now it's up to you whether you believe in prophecy or not, but I do believe that all prophecy comes to pass. That if you imagine it, it exists. You have giants at the bottom of the ocean, and you can see how the progression of the word Rephaim in Scripture gives you very interesting clues. Earlier in Scripture, the word Rephaim meant giants. Later on, After the flood, you know, the word gets defined a different way. After the death of the giants, the word Rephaim, they start using this word as meaning spirits or ghosts or disembodied spirits, right? Because after they died, they were not permitted to go to heaven, and their souls will never rest. They will never have peace. They're wandering, disembodied spirits. And we have angelic intelligence out there that is both good and bad. It's not all doom and gloom. We just need to be aware of the negative situations out there so we can have defenses for it. But the thing is that the angelic intelligence that is good, they guide us telepathically. They give us spiritual signs. Sometimes, most of the times, we are unaware of their presence, of their guidance. Usually, the ones that get physically involved with people have agendas of the rebellious fallen angels. Most people cannot handle the contact, and there is a hybridization program going on. The gray aliens, all of those are creations of the rebellious fallen angels. This is why they have creations like the Nephilim and the Rephaim to carry out what the rebellious angels cannot do. I mean, the times that they did break the laws of the universe by God, many of them were locked in a fiery pit for eternity because of their disobeying. They know the judgment that will come if they break the laws. This is why they created the Nephilim. How's everybody doing out there? I mean, this is intense information, and I also I already started doing the Padre Pio. I'm going to be talking a lot about certain miracles that have happened and certain things that are related to even Jesus. And I'm going to be discussing a lot of the saints and a lot of information, because it's up people to make their own choice. Even some of the Jewish sages, the contact that they're having, is it truly God, or is it messengers of the universe? Is it an angelic intelligence that is contacting these people? And you can see it's proven that comets are bringing virus and all sorts of genetic change to planets. And it proves God, in my opinion. It proves there's a divine intelligence out there. There's so much to discuss, and the technology that actually hacks into the programming of comets is a galactic computer. And we have etheric crystal technologies out there that is related to this. This is what brought destruction to the dinosaurs and made them never to grow again to that size. And this is why some of the ancient seers, they're able to connect to ancient historic data through embodying meteorites, through certain stones. The ultimate diviners and seers can see through quartz, can see through obsidian, can see through crystals to see the data that's really incorporated in it. And these crystal tablets, even the etheric inner earth crystal tablets and different crystals, even if they have etchings on them, those etchings are telepathic locks that open up other information. There's locks within locks within locks. This is exactly how hieroglyphics work in ancient Egypt. Those hieroglyphics that you see is just a lock to access the next piece of information within the environment around it and within the place that it is. They are codes within codes. They are locks within locks. So thank you everybody for joining me this morning. It's been fun. Thank you for sharing this moment of eternity with me, and spiral out.